Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Len Topic and welcome to Cats and Dogs here on Press TV. And what you are hearing right now is the triumphant march of the Israeli army. Why are you laughing? Could it be that these people are in fact a group of peaceniks and anti-war activists who don't want to kill anybody at all? And they sneaked into the army because they want to stop all that fighting. That would explain why the Israeli army recently arrested a number of its own officers for selling off their weapons. The Cats and Dogs team have worked out this means they only joined the Israeli army to disarm it by selling all the guns. And I'm sure the fact they made a bit of money on the side by selling them to people who actually want to use them had absolutely nothing to do with it. Make cash, not war, man. Maybe it's thanks to the peace-loving kindness of these soldiers that the Israeli army is re-equipping itself with fully automatic guns controlled by satellite when carrying its courageous assassination attempts around the world. Robots are cheaper and they don't listen to Bob Dylan. And that's not all. The leaders of this fine fighting force have been in Tel Aviv drawing up plans to strike Iran's peaceful nuclear program in the dying days of the Trump presidency. But who will do the shooting? Robots or humans? If they send their soldiers, there's always a risk of another naughty weapons sell-off. Come on, David, the enemy is coming. Why aren't you shooting your weapon? No, Benjamin, do you know how much these guns are worth? These guys obviously need the guns more than we do, and I bet they'll give good money for a gun like this one as long as it's never been used. Oh, and a word about the rather hard to believe figures on what Israel says about casualties their forces inflict. Maybe they've been training Israeli soldiers the wrong way.
Die, you mother!
Now, some claim that the Israeli army cannot do anything by itself and it prefers to outsource its own military missions. That's why when the US decided to withdraw from Syria, Israel, arguably the spoiled child of the world, as former Saudi Foreign Minister Saud Faisal described them once, voiced its concerns. Strangely, now that Trump is being evicted from the White House, AIPAC, or the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, has expressed outrage and disgust at the violence in the streets of Washington, D.C., while also criticizing Trump for the incitement. That was quick. They used to love Trump. Now they can't wait to shift their A-OK from the outgoing president to the incoming president. Good old Sleepy Joe.
Oh, okay.
It's like someone who suddenly decides they have nothing in common with their wife anymore because she ran out of the money you married her for, and just after you started a new relationship with someone else, who in this case just happens to live in the White House. Let's be fair, Israel does have the most powerful army in the region, for now. So they've got to back Biden, because someone's got to pay for it all. And you can only make so much money from selling arms to the enemy. You've just got to ask, without support from the White House, how fighting fit would the Israeli army actually be? The obvious question is, why hasn't Trump flown his supporters over from Washington, D.C. to Israel to teach those poor Israeli soldiers how to climb walls? If Trump had sent his fans to Tel Aviv instead of Capitol Hill, Israel would at least know how to invade its own government buildings. Let's now spare a thought for those poor Israeli children who believe their army really is one of the strongest in the world. Yes, those wacky Israeli kids there, calling on the Israeli army to kill Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. And with support like that, it's no wonder the soldiers are inspired to step up to the task. Now, that Palestinian kid you just saw there was indeed Mahmoud Abbas, but not the presidential one. But, well, a kid unlucky enough to share the name. But come on, I bet that kid's done something wrong. After all, he's Palestinian, so I guess he deserved it. But as I've mentioned, there is one group in the army there with no lack of resolve or energy for their assassination efforts, namely their drones. Who needs peacenik soldiers when all you need is a remote control and a load of batteries? Now let's see what our Cats and Dogs time machine has in store for us this week.
"1,000 years ago, some Arab states normalized their relations with Israel. They had already become tired of fighting and promised to establish relations with Tel Aviv if it only recognized a Palestinian state. After a few decades, they reviewed their condition. They said on condition of an airport being built in Gaza, they would recognize Israel. 2 years after the airport was inaugurated by Bill Clinton, the Israeli regime welcomed the plan. Israel's honesty made the Arabs renegotiate with the regime. A few while later, the Israeli army shot down an Emirati airplane carrying 2 Palestinian citizens. So the Arabs decided to make a better deal with Israel. After this historic visit, the majority of the Palestinians supported the deal, and just a few of them protested.
Let's get back to that other story now and talk to one of the children who's been calling for the assassination of the Palestinian president. Hello, my young friend, how are you?
None of your business.
Hang on, aren't you supposed to be at school right now?
Shut up.
And on that point, don't they teach you manners at school anymore?
School. I don't need to go to school to know how to demonstrate.
Well, about those demonstrations, why have you been going round calling for the death of the Palestinian president?
It's homework.
What do you mean, homework?
They're teaching us a few golden rules.
What kind of rules?
Grab land, evict tenants, and if necessary, get the army to deal with any problems.
What do you mean, get the army to deal with any problems?
I mean, they go in and kick them out, as long as they don't have to climb any walls. And kill Mahmoud Abbas.
Do you actually know who Mahmoud Abbas is?
Isn't he a dangerous terrorist?
No, he's not a terrorist. He's the legally recognized president of Palestine.
Whatever.
No, seriously, why do you think he's a terrorist?
They told us to say all that if we wanted a day off school.
One more question. How come your English is so fluent?
I am English, but I moved here because the planning rules are better here.
What do you mean?
Well, you move to Palestine, choose a house, and instead of using an estate agent, the army does the rest.
Don't you think throwing people out of their homes is a bit unfair to the people who are actually living there?
If getting evicted is good enough for Donald Trump, it's good enough for the Palestinians.
I'll take that on board. Thank you and goodbye. And that's all we have time for this week. Join me next week to find out who's calling who a terrorist, who's getting evicted, and who's paying who for guns at knockdown prices. This is Press TV. I'm Lemon Opic, and that was Cats and Dogs.